In this video, I'm going to show you how to fill out the basic Georgia tax appeal form, the PT-311-A form. Now, before I get started, I want to provide a disclaimer. The information I'm providing is not legal, financial, or professional advice at all. This is just general information to help you along. If you need professional help, you need to seek out one and hire one. But this is just general information. Also, what I'm about to share with you is based on my personal experiences and my personal opinions. It's based on my filing over 100 tax appeals across 4 Georgia counties in the last 10 years or so. Because I want to make this video easy to understand, I'm going to be using a basic scenario. The basic scenario is you're a property owner and you have a single family home and it's been homesteaded. Now, I understand that some counties in Georgia, when you buy the home, the values are frozen until you sell the home. So if you are fortunate enough to be in one of those counties where your property taxes are frozen for as long as you live in the house, great. But there are many counties where even if you do have homestead exemption, you're going to be having to file an appeal if you want to keep your taxes under control. The other scenario is where I came from, is basically a single family home situation where you have rental homes. Rental homes are considered investment property and there are no tax breaks. And they're the ones that are most vulnerable to tax increases. Now, along the similar lines, the information I'm about to share with you also covers duplexes and triplexes. Basically, any structure that has 1 to 3 units, which is the single family home, which I've already covered, the duplex, and the triplex. If you have 4 units and higher, it's considered commercial. If you have a quadruplex, it's considered to be commercial and you deal with it slightly differently. And in this basic scenario, what we're doing is we're challenging the basic value of the assessment. First off, I want to show you what the basic Georgia tax appeal form looks like, the PT-311-A form. As you can see, there's nothing fancy about it. It's very plain. There are a number of fields. There's some check boxes. At the very bottom, there's a section for the tax assessor's office. Through my experiences and research, I can tell you that not all 159 counties in Georgia use the basic form, as shown on the screen. But I don't want to alarm you. The forms that deviate from the basic form are not all that different. So, for example, the first example I want to show you is the Fulton County Board of Assessors form. As you can see, they ask for a lot of the same fields, the same check boxes, and overall it's very recognizable to the basic form. My next example is DeKalb County. DeKalb County has restructured the form quite a bit from the basic form, but it's still very recognizable. Moving along to Cobb County, what they've done here is adapted the basic form, and of course, like Fulton County, what they've done is they've put their contact information, their office information, their website. And my final example is the Chatham County. Once again, the layout is slightly different. It's mostly cosmetic. All the checkboxes and fields are essentially the same as the basic form. So overall, the point I want to make is don't be alarmed if your county uses a slightly different form than the form that I'm showing you here in this presentation. In this screen, what I've done is I've blown up the basic form since the majority of the counties in Georgia will be using this form. It's not really all that difficult. Starting from the top, you will see that there is a field for the year, which you will fill in. Now, some counties, they will fill it in for you with their pre-printed forms. You'll put in property owner's name. You want to put the mailing address. For many people, they use a mail service or they use a P.O. box. You will want to put the address of where you want to get your follow-up information. Now, it should match what's on record. And if it doesn't match on record, what you can do is contact the tax assessor's office and let them know which address you prefer. If you have a P.O. box, I highly recommend it. You want to put in the city, you want to put the state, in the zip code. The fields for the home phone, work phone, and email address are self-explanatory. Now here, moving along, you will see checkboxes for the property appeal type, and you only check one. In this scenario, we're going to talk about real estate property taxes. So we will be checking off the real box. Now, it gets a little bit trickier here. I will tell you that I've been thrown for a loop a couple of times, but whatever I have written seems to have worked just fine. And generally, you go back to your original notice of assessment and you put in the property ID number in the field listed. Now, the property description, if you look at the notice of assessment, it's very cryptic as far as I'm concerned. Now, I have intentionally chosen to put the street address, mainly because I just don't want there to be any confusion that if I goof up the property ID number, that at least I will be able to get the street address of the property correct. So I'm just letting you know right now, that is a personal choice. It doesn't exactly match to the notice of assessment, but I prefer to make sure that the tax assessor's office knows which property I'm talking about, because up above, I typically put my P.O. box, or it will be a different address that will not necessarily match the property address. Now, regarding the account number, I'm actually not sure how heavily they look at this, even if you get it wrong, but nevertheless, I do fill in the account number and I pull that over from the PT-306 notice of assessment. Moving along, you will find that there are several check boxes for the grounds for appeal: value, uniformity, taxability, exemption denied, breach of covenant, denial of covenant. For most people, you will be checking the value box. That's where most people file their appeals. And that's the scenario we're talking about in this presentation. Now, to the right, you will have 4 options of who you're going to appeal this to. Generally speaking, and the least expensive and the easiest way to get your taxes appealed is going through the Board of Equalization. It's listed here as the BOE. If you want to do arbitration, hearing officer, or go to Superior Court, that's definitely way beyond the scope of this presentation. Now here, on the owner's value assertion, this is where you want to put the value of what you think your property should be valued at. Now, I will tell you, this is not an exact science. You may have all your documents, you may have done your research, and so forth, but at the end of the day, it can still be difficult to put down a number. Now, what I will suggest is that if you are uncertain whether to round your values up or round your values down, I would recommend that you round your values down. And I've been guilty of this. In an effort to try to be fair, I sometimes put a value that's a little bit less aggressive. And there have been a few times where I have regretted it, because over time, in doing more research, I realized, oh darn, the value that I put on the form could have been lower. And by that point, it's too late. So my suggestion is, when you put the value in, use a lower number to protect yourself. Now, the property owner comments section, in the basic form, you only get 2 lines. I'm going to tell you, there's not enough room to properly submit the information you'll need to win your tax appeal. For example, you may want to include photos. Well, there's no way you're going to be attached photos on these 2 lines. You may want to offer some explanations. With only 2 lines, you're only going to be able to get a few sentences in, which is not nearly enough. And in my situation, where I deal with rental properties, there are a number of items that lower the value, such as a broken water heater or an old roof, or a cracked foundation, or wear and tear of rooms, or bad paint. There are just numerous items that will drive down the value of a rental property, and there's just not enough room. So what I generally do is I put some of the big bullet points, such as old roof, old water heater, wood damage, and so forth. And then what I will do is I will make sure that I put a comment that says see attached comps, photos, and written statement. It's a notification to the tax assessor's office that in addition to this form, you have other supporting documents and evidence to back up the value that you're shooting for. In the next line, most of you in this basic scenario will be checking off residential. I don't know why it is, but residential in Georgia, I have been told, is considered to be 1 to 3 units. So, and that has been, I've asked the question from a few tax assessors' office, and that's just the way it is. So if you have a quadruplex, for example, it falls into the commercial checkbox. And of course, if you do an industrial, agricultural, or something much more elaborate, that is definitely way beyond the scope of this presentation and certainly beyond my expertise. So I just want to be straight up with you on that. Okay, so once you check the residential box, you want to make sure that the property owner signs the form. Now, if you're going to have somebody that represents you, such as an agent, and I'm not necessarily talking about a real estate agent, an agent in the context of the tax assessor's office is a person that you are appointing to help you with your appeal. It can be a family member, it can be a friend, or it could be a hired professional. But somebody who has authorization needs to sign the form. And of course, you need to include the date of when you signed it. Now, if you have somebody to represent you, such as a friend or a business associate or a professional, you will want to put their address, their phone number, and their email address so that they can be reached. Now, the form conveniently reminds you that if you do have an agent, someone who helps you with this tax appeal, you need to include a letter of authorization, and it's nothing fancy. And below that, I blocked it out only because we're not going to be filling it out at all, and I wanted to make sure you could see the essential fields and checkboxes that you need to fill out. So that's pretty much it in terms of filling out your basic tax appeal form. Now, if you've never done this before, it can be a little bit time consuming to try to write the statement, gather your photos, and gather the sales comps. Also, you could run into a time crunch. If you run out of time, you must absolutely mail in and postmark the envelope of the appeal form. You need to get it in. That is the minimum that you have to submit, even if you don't have enough time to get the other documents. You will have plenty of time after you submit your appeal form into the tax assessor's office to gather the other things that I recommend. Also, do not wait until the last day. Yes, you can technically wait until the last day to mail in your tax appeal form. But if you're going to do it on the last day, you're going to want to go to the post office in person and make sure that they postmark that envelope. I just don't like the idea of waiting to the last day. I really don't. Ideally, I like to get my appeal form no later than a few days before it's due. And unfortunately, nowadays, the U.S. mail is slower and less reliable than ever. And when you do send it in, especially if you're running really tight on time, you will want to use tracking like certified mail. Priority mail also provides a tracking number. Whether you send in the basic appeal form only or you submit it with supporting documentation that I've recommended, you will always want to call or email the tax assessor's office a few days later to make sure they have received it and they've recorded it. What you don't want to have happen is you send it in and they never get your tax appeal form. That is a bad situation. And this is where your post office receipt will come in handy. Another way to follow up is you can look up the status of your tax appeal online for those counties that have that service. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this was helpful. And if you like it, please like and subscribe.